So, quick question. Who here has heard about this guy named Jonah? Jonah. All right, so we're going to do a little word association. We're going to see if this works. So, this worked kind of for first service. I don't know, I'm going to be reaching with some of these references, but Lennon and McCartney. We're familiar with those? Okay, I got one right away. All right, Sonny and Cher. Oh, I got you, baby. And then Batman and Robin. All right. Jonah and the Whale. All right, Jonah and the Whale. But are they really like a dynamic duo like the others? They didn't make any hit songs or save anybody from the Joker or anything. Jonah and the Whale. Man, but that's how we associate Jonah a lot. Right? So maybe it's from Sunday school and just all these cartoons and coloring sheets and just novels. The whale gets a bad rap, man, because I don't want to be hanging out with that Jonah character. We're going to talk about that here in a second. So if you take one thing away from this message today, let's start associating Jonah with who he really is, and not with his unique form of transportation that God provided for him. The whale is actually just a really small portion. So I do have a confession to make. Whenever they asked me to do the bulletin insert here, they're like, hey, do you have a few verses, like reference verses? And I was like, sure, all the while knowing I was going to go through the whole book real fast. So you guys are stuck with me for a second. But we're going to look at Jonah chapter 4, verses 10 through 11. It's the last two verses. And I'll go ahead and read, and you guys can read along as well. And I just want us to tuck this in the back of our head, because it might not make too much sense right now. It's out of context, but we'll get there. It says, but the Lord said, you have been concerned about this vine, though you did not tend it or make it grow. It sprang up overnight and died overnight. But Nineveh has more than 120,000 people who cannot tell their right hand from their left, and many cattle as well. Should I not be concerned about that great city? Now this is the Lord talking to Jonah. And it's kind of hard to gauge, it's just whenever you send a text and somebody takes it the wrong way, well, the Lord's not too happy with Jonah. Let's just put it that way. We're going to find out why. So I love the way this book starts off. It just gives somebody a calling right off the bat. It says, the word of the Lord came to Jonah. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. So Jonah's got this awesome task to go to a not-so-awesome city. So what do you think he does? You think like any good prophet in the Bible, he's like, all right, gets all of his affairs in order and sets off? No, he goes the exact opposite direction. And we're going to show you exactly how far Jonah went. So this little red dot under Joppa, that's kind of where he was at. Nineveh is to the east, so far away you can't even see it. It takes up more than we have screened. So God wanted him to go east, just a mere 550 miles, which at that time was quite a bit. But we were told that Jonah instead headed for Tarshish, which is all the way to the west, about as far in the known world as you could go at that time. So he went running the opposite direction. We don't really know why yet. It just says Jonah ran away from the Lord. So he found a ship, because obviously he wasn't going to swim that. So he talks to some ship hands there, and he's like, hey, I'm running away from the Lord. Can you take me to Tarshish? And they're like, okay, sure. And they're all fine with it until God does what God normally does in that body of water when people are running from him, and he summons a mighty storm. I would not want to be in that area if I was on the wrong side of God. That's his go-to method of making people pay attention. So he sends a violent storm. And it says each of the sailors cried out to their own God. So these guys were not God-fearing people of the Hebrew God. They were God-fearing of their own, idol worshippers. They began to throw the cargo into the sea and lighten the ship. They were really scared. Where do you think Jonah was while all this was going on? Any guesses here? He was taking a deep sleep. That's an actual quote there. It says he was taking a deep sleep in the ship. So while all this chaos and terror is going on, and we got people outside throwing the ship apart just to keep it afloat, Jonah's just passed out and having a good old nap. The captain goes down below and says, what's happening? How can you be sleeping right now? This is obviously your fault. They did the whole cast the lots thing. They're, oh man, this is Jonah's fault. So they bring Jonah up to the top of the ship, and they're like, tell us again who you are and what you're doing here. And he gives them this awesome speech, He says all the right things. He says, I am a Hebrew and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven who made the sea and the land. It says this terrified them even more because they remembered that he said he was running from this very same Lord. So we got Jonah. He's a good prophet. Maybe he's really good at saying the right things, but he's not really living up to it. So this is going to be kind of introspective book, so we can start to kind of tuck these away in our head, and we can kind of see where maybe we might be a little bit like Jonah. So he says all the right things, but in his heart, we're gonna see how that gets revealed. So they do what any seafarers would do. They decide that they're going to talk with him, and he tells them to throw him overboard. So they're like, okay, we're going to do that. So they ask God for forgiveness first, and they chuck Jonah overboard at his own request. Now this might seem like a very noble thing for him to say, hey, listen guys, sacrifice me and you'll be saved. But there's actually evidence to point out that Jonah wasn't trying to be a sacrificial lamb, so to speak. He was actually just trying to get out of his responsibility. And there's evidence to support that we're going to get to later. So he wasn't being as righteous as some may think. He just wanted to get out of what God was calling him to do. So these sailors obliged, and they tossed him overboard. What's interesting, though, is these sailors actually repented after the seas calmed down, and they came to know God as their God. It says that they offered sacrifices and made vows to God. So even though Jonah didn't actually profess to these people, they were still changed. They were changed by the experience with them. God will not be denied, no matter what we may think. So we get the first of Jonah's prayers. So Jonah's in the water for a bit, and God sends a great fish or a whale, depending on translations. I like the idea of a whale. I like a cartoon whale. That's the one I always picture. So that's probably how it happens. So there's this big whale that comes and grabs Jonah, and he gives us this prayer. And at first glance, like, this is a good prayer. But we're going to back it up with what we just read and what we know. So I'm going to read Jonah's prayers in chapter 2. He says, in my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From the depths of the grave I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the deep, into the very heart of the sea, and the currents swirled around me. Stop right there, because there's some lies. There's some fibs in there. First of all, I don't remember reading anywhere where Jonah called out to the Lord in his distress. That did not happen, apparently. He also kind of blames God for his circumstance. He says, you hurled me into the deep. Not quite true. A bunch of sailors did that at his request. So God did not do that to him. All of your waves and breakers swept over me. Again, not Jonah's waves or God's waves. Thanks for doing that to me. He said, I have been banished from your sight, yet I will look again towards your holy temple. The engulfing waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me. I love this. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. Like, out of all the things that could be going through his mind, he was worried about the seaweed that was messing up his hair. But it kind of shows maybe a little bit of selfishness there. To the roots of the mountains I sink down. The earth beneath barred me in forever. But you brought my life up from the pit, O Lord my God. He gets really dramatic here. Again, I think he knows all the right things to say. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you, to your holy temple. I, with a song of thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you. I have vowed I will make good. Salvation comes from the Lord. Well, like I said, he's a wordsmith. He does a second prayer just a little bit later on, and it's actually from the heart. This one's from his mouth. The other one's from his heart. What happens right after this is God give him a good old pat on the back and say, good, well done, my faithful servant. Now it says he commands the fish to vomit him onto the land. So that's his triumphant entry back into service. And God doesn't give him much time to clean off. It says, the word of the Lord came to him a second time, and it said the same thing as the first. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim my message that I give to you. So Jonah obeyed. He may have begrudgingly obeyed, but he obeyed. He went there. And doing some research, we find that Nineveh is a very big city at that the time. Really big. They said it takes about 3 days to travel through. Pretty large city. And from the verse we read earlier, about 120,000 people lived there. So Jonah's got this awesome message. He was just saved from sure doom. What do you think he does? How far does he make it into the 3 days? Well, we read he started on his first day, and then he proclaims his message. And the message that he gives is probably not the one that God would want him to give. It's about 6 or 7 words, and it just says, 40 more days and Nineveh will be overturned. So he gives like this very apocalyptic prophecy. Now, I don't know about you, but if somebody was to barge the doors right now and say, we have 40 days to live, we would all probably look at them and go about what we were doing. I don't know that any of us might be changed. There's a possibility. But I think the important thing to remember here is that Jonah was 1 day into a 3-day journey, gave a real quick prophecy, kind of cashed it in. For like the second or third time. He's just kind of saying what he thinks should be said. He's doing the bare minimum of his calling. But despite that, God is amazing. And it says that the Ninevites believed. That prophecy was effective. They believed. And it says that they declared a fast, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth. This next verse is amazing because if we really look at it, I think it says a lot. Chapter 3, verse 6 says, when the news reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne, took off his royal robes, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat down in the dust. Then he issued a proclamation. So we know that Jonah stopped on the first day into the city. But the news still reached the king. So who do you think spread that news? Probably wasn't Jonah. He was done. The people, the evil, wicked Ninevites who repented at the prophecy of God, they continued to share the word of God amongst themselves until it reached the king. So these wicked people, this nation of murderers and adulterers and slave traders, wicked people, they did a better job of sharing God's message than God's own messenger. It's very interesting. The king reads his decree, and it pretty much just goes on to say, let no man or beast taste anything. The whole city was in a fast. And he prays, may God yet relent with compassion and turn from his fierce anger so that we will not perish. There was no guarantee that God would relent, yet these people still put their trust in him. We read that God is compassionate. It says when God saw that what they did and how they did it, that they turned from their evil ways, he had compassion and did not bring them the destruction he had threatened. So in a roundabout way, Jonah did help proclaim a message. So how do you think he felt about this? He proclaimed the message to Nineveh and it was very successful. Well, we're told Jonah was greatly displeased and became angry. That's an interesting way to go about it. If you're a prophet from God, people actually respond. That's kind of what you're looking for. He didn't like that though. And this reveals initially why he ran away and why he tried to have other people throw him into the water. This is his prayer. It says this is his prayer that he prayed to the Lord. O Lord, is this not what I said when I was still at home? That is why I was so quick to flee. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, O Lord, take my life, for it is better for me to die than to live. Jonah's so upset that people are actually coming to Christ, or coming to God. We're not there yet. Coming to God, that it's driving him crazy. He can't believe, how can God be so compassionate? How can God be concerned about these wicked evil people? He should be concerned about me and my feelings, what I went through. We're told that Jonah, or actually the Lord asks him, have you any right to be angry? And he never answers. The first time. Have you any right to be angry? The Lord replied. Jonah goes and sulks on the east part of the city. He exits the city, he finds a hill, and he makes himself a shelter, like a little man cave out there. You know, just like a little temporary place he can hang out for a bit. And we're told that he's watching the city. Now he's watching it for a specific reason. It says he's watching the city, waiting to see what would happen. He's still waiting for God to destroy the city. in his heart, even though he's gone to these people, and he's answered his calling, and he's still waiting for these people to be destroyed. So, like most things, this takes a biblical turn, and God provides a vine, and this vine grows and provides shade for his little watch party. Jonah's super happy now. Ooh, God took care of me. I got shade. Then the next day, God sent a scorching heat, along with a little worm that ate away his shelter. So now he has no shade. He's got this terrible heat. And there he goes back to being true Jonah again. It says he wanted to die and said, it would be better for me to die than to live. This is the third time he's asked for that outcome. But God said to Jonah, do you have any right to be angry about the vine? This time Jonah answers. He says, I do. I am angry enough to die. That's number 4. As far as I know, we don't hear from Jonah anymore after this. God may have answered that request. Who knows? But we don't hear from him anymore. And the only other part of the Bible that we actually hear from Jonah himself is, I believe, in 2 Kings, and he's giving a prophecy, a favorable prophecy to a not so favorable king. And his prophecy actually gets overturned by another prophet named Amos. So Jonah's track record is kind of rocky, but God uses everybody. We're going to go back to 10 and 11. That's the verse that we started off with, and it says, but the Lord said, you have been concerned about this vine, though you did not tend it or make it grow. It sprang up overnight and died overnight. But Nineveh has more than 120,000 people who cannot tell their right hand from their left, and many cattle as well. Should I not be concerned about that great city? Now, as I was doing this, I loved it because it ends with God's word. There's no commentary afterward. There's no, and then this happened. And it's kind of like life. God's going to have the final say. He's going to have the final word. Despite what we may say, or the excuses we might make, or the, well, this happened or that happened, at the end of the day, God has the final word. He gave us our calling. What did we do with it? You know? He's going to let us talk. We're going to have those prayers. He'll even let us talk to him like Jonah did. Although I'm praying. But he's going to have the final word. I have a few questions for you after we just ran through that book. And I don't want these to be like singled out questions. I don't want people to be like, oh, you know, maybe he's talking to me because I'm talking to myself. And I'll share that with you. But I want this to be a self-introspective time. We're going to follow Jonah's journey. Are any of you at that point where you're running from your calling? Maybe God's told you. Maybe it's very clear. Are you running away from it? Maybe there's some of us that are on the boat in the storm, happily going the opposite way, all while proclaiming Christ as your Lord. That was me for a long time. Not really following what God wanted me to do, but yeah, I'm a Christian. Yeah, I can tell you about that. I know some stuff. That was me for a very long time. Is there anyone here where God's pulling them back to himself for really, really drastic and crazy means? Like, not necessarily a fish, but if it is a fish, I'd like to know about it. That's really cool. But is there anybody that you just find yourself being pulled back towards God's service? Must be very recent. This is a tough one, Jan. This is the last one. This is in my Bible here. I shared it earlier. This is a gut check one. It says, are there people guarding their salvation jealously as their own possession? Are we doing that? Are there people or nations that we are setting up camp and just watching in our little shelter, safety, watching, hoping that they get destroyed? If you guys watch the news, you know there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. There's Venezuela, there's North Korea, there's Russia, there's China. A lot of these places can be viewed as enemies, in a sense. A lot of these places we've had conflicts with before, and a lot of these places there's continuing conflicts. What if God calls you your most hated enemy? What if you were a victim of a violent crime and God called you to witness to prison? What if you had a bad experience in military service with a certain nation or people group, and God calls you to witness to them? Would you go or would you run? Are you going or are you running? Not everybody has a call to go overseas, but everybody has a call. Some of you have been called from other places to come here. That's great. We love you and we thank you. There's a lot of transplants here, and that's an amazing thing. There's a lot of people that have a heart for this local community. Without you, it would be hard to do anything. I feel like there's a few of us that are called to go elsewhere. Maybe there's some in this room that know it. Maybe there's some that are thinking about it. Maybe there's some that are, oh, that can't be me. Don't think of the word missionary. A lot of people, I think, disqualify themselves. Like, oh, that's not me. I can't do that. I did that for a long time. Just think of the word servant. Overseas servant is what we use for servant. Maybe you're not a missionary, but maybe you could be a good overseas servant. Love that. Part-time, full-time, 3 weeks, 3 years, 30 years. I've met people that do it all. If serving the Lord is something you're interested in, please get connected. Whether that's through myself, or through Jesse, or through people that have been overseas, or through people that are here doing local like AT ministries or evangelism ministries, lay leaders. Get plugged in somewhere. Start serving. Start serving. You'll see a huge difference. Ever since Stephanie and I gave that part of our life to the Lord, it's been crazy with opportunities. This June I'll be going to Japan with my son. There's a chance in October to go to a Riverside type retreat in Thailand. There's another trip in Thailand in January that I would love to take some people on. Let me know. There's opportunities in Japan next year. I actually just found out from my professor last night at school that he would love to have his students go on an archaeological dig of Tel Shimron in the Jezreel Valley at the end of July. Like, what do these things come up with? My thing is, if you ask for it, God will give it. And, one of the last parts of the Old Testament there says that if you test God with blessings, He's going to give you so many that you're not going to have a place to store them. And we can attest to that right now. There's so many opportunities that we're going to have to pass on some, but I'd love to have people go in place of us and maybe start your own journey. Having said that, I know we have a meeting here. I just got like 6 slides I want to share with you, 6 or 7 slides. This was my trip to Thailand that I took. I know this was a little rough to see, but I'm going to have questions with each of these. Because I think a lot of people think of a missionary and they think of a person with a backpack and a sunscreen and the bug repellent and the Bibles and many different languages and tracts. And you can be that person. If you want to be that person, let's get you plugged in right away because they need you. So you can be an overseas servant in many different ways. And this is one. You love food? Night market. It's Thailand night market. I had some bugs there. I also had some chili cheese fries. So whatever you want, they got. But this can be a ministry opportunity. You can set up shop, have people come up to you that may never hear about the Bible, about the Lord, and you have a captive audience for a little bit. Next slide, please. This is a school. This is actually at the Daniel Training Center where they do language studies. So if you decide to go really long term, they kind of immerse you into language studies and culture studies. That way you're as effective as you possibly can be. But as a parent, I'm like, oh man, what are my kids going to do while I'm doing the one-on-one language study? Well, this is what the kids will be doing. They'll be learning downstairs. Maybe you love kids. Maybe you have a teaching gift. Maybe you could be an overseas servant this way. Next slide. That is an empty field. But not for long. That field was purchased with a dream to make it a Riverside type retreat camp. There's going to be a soccer pitch there. There's going to be little condominiums for the people to stay on, and they have grand plans for that. Maybe you're a visionary. Maybe you see a field like that, you see opportunity. Maybe God's calling you to go to places and be a builder. Help assist, be an electrician. You love music? I do. That's about as quaint as you can get. But you know what? They're worshiping God the same as we are. The equipment might not be the best, but you know what? God doesn't care. We can worship God without that. But if your passion is music ministry, particular need, they could use you. You could be an overseas servant there. This is Bible study. I know everybody here loves the Bible. So if that's something you feel led to do, you could do Bible studies. It doesn't have to be in Thailand. It could be in Japan. It could be, at your next door neighbor's house. It could be in Africa. It could be in South America. It could be in Cuba. You can be yourself, the Christian person you are, somewhere else, and have an impact on the kingdom of God. We saw a lot of amazing stories here. Met a lot of great people. But it starts somewhere. It starts with someone. This is a church in Lockery. You may have been here. I'm not sure. This is Lockery Church. And this was an interesting one. I got to actually go with my shoes on, which is a big treat. Most of them, you got some shoes off there. But this actually used to be a church where people with leprosy attended. So those of you who know leprosy, causes some abnormalities there. And I guess it was just a little hard and shameful for people to go in and take their shoes off. So they just kind of got the tradition and habit of leaving your shoes on. If God called some of you to help and reach the lame and the hurt and the lepers of the world, would you do it? That church, real fast, we can go back to that church started off out of the love that people had for caring for people that were seen as throwaways. But there's no throwaways to God. And out of their love and compassion to help people, we got this. There's my friend Chris Akazuki. He was one of my fellow short-termers there. This is a school. Actually, I'll tell you about Chris real fast. He actually went to Thailand 3 years ago to become a Buddhist monk. And he went to Thailand to become a Buddhist monk. And he actually went to a church service on Sunday. Got invited into a tribe, and he thought he was going to go meet like the Shaolin master, is what he said. He's like, we're finally going to go. He was at the Aka tribe up there, and he's like, oh man, I'm going to finally meet the Grand Master, and I'm going to learn from him. Well, they went to a church, like a Christian church, so they bamboozled him, but he ended up finding God that day, him and his friend that he was with. So they went to Thailand to become Buddhists and they became Christians. So awesome testimony. But that's a school. That's Monterey Christian Center. That used to be part of a hospital for leprosy patients. And God did some amazing things there. Next slide. And if you love kids, you love basketball, there's sports opportunities. You can be a missionary and help with sports. All sorts of opportunities. Next slide, please. Radio station. That's in the back of the church. They also have a water filtration factory that they built. But this is a radio station, and they get to broadcast their sermons at certain parts of the day. And whenever they're not broadcasting sermons, we actually went in there, and they were playing stuff from the Monkees. So they're playing 50s and 60s, light rock. I guess just whatever they have access to. But they're trying. They're trying. So if you love sound engineer, if you know anything about that, sound engineering, Greg's going to go to Thailand right here. So, you can go there. You can go there and serve the Lord. Next slide, please. Oh, this is a tough one. This is the urban port area there. And, you see little kids and they're always supposed to be smiling. And I finally saw one kid there and she wasn't smiling. She was really sad. And she was really scared. There was a moped that went by her and she was super scared. It really touched me a little bit because, she reminded me of my daughter a lot. And I was like, little kids, they shouldn't be scared. They shouldn't be scared of their safety. Just walking to and from the grocery store. She was scared. And that's tough to think that there's whole communities like this that live with no running water and raw sewage everywhere, and that's kind of some drinking water there too as well. If God's calling you, would you go to that area? There's missionaries that are living there right now. Some are only living there a few days out of the week because it's too tough to live there full time. These are the type of people we're called to go witness to. This is the last slide, I believe. This is a Christian book company, the Panasan, I believe, remember that correctly. And they do a lot of Bible translations. They do a lot of literature translations. They just worked on a Billy Graham book that they translated to Thai. They do leaflets and tracts, and they do theological books so kids can go to school and learn about the Bible. They do coloring books. They do all sorts of things. But they're funded by donors. They don't really make a ton of money, and they work almost a year in advance. So God's gifted you financially. You can reach overseas without ever going overseas. And that's just one of the miracles of the time that we live in right now. If you love books, if you love media, if you love graphic design, they can plug you in. I said all that just to say this. To get back to Jonah, I know some of us have callings and some of us are ignoring them. Some of us feel like we haven't heard the callings. I would pray that God would reveal them loud and clear to you. And I would ask that God gives you the boldness and the strength and the courage and the craziness to follow Him sometimes, even when others might think it's a really strange or weird. Why are you doing that? Well, we know why we're doing it. Because God calls us to it. The New Testament, almost all of us about persevering through the hard times. So we know that the hard times are going to be there, right? So we just got to persevere through. Trust in God, lean on Him. Don't run away to the edge of the earth, unless that's where God's calling you. If He's calling you to the edge of the earth, by all means go. But don't run away from your calling. I can tell you that leads to heartbreak. It leads to a false sense of your own walk, and you cannot ever figure out where you're going to go in life unless you know where you're currently at right now. The first part of figuring out how to get somewhere is, where am I? You got to have a point of reference. So where are we right now? What part of the Jonah's journey are we in? So I'd like to thank everybody. Thank you all. I love doing this. I get a little nervous sometimes, but I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity and chance to do this. Thank Pastor, everybody that makes this possible. I'd like to give thanks to God, and I would like to close this in prayer, and we'll get some communion and have fellowship with God. Dear God, we just thank you so much that we can dive into your word, Lord, and they can have meaning and impact today, even though it was written thousands of years ago, Lord. That it still has power, it's still living and active and breathing courage into us to this day, Lord. We thank you so much that you give us calls. You don't just leave us stranded, Lord. You don't leave us hanging. There are slower times, Lord, and there are faster times. We thank you for both, Lord. But we ask that you just give us the strength to follow you, to be used by you, to be used for the kingdom. And let all the other things just pass by, Lord. Maybe there's somebody in here that's thinking, that sounds like something I might be interested in, but I don't know. Lord, before anybody says no to anything, Lord, I would ask that you give it a day or two and pray about it. And just listen to you. Lord, give them the strength to not say yes or no immediately, Lord, but to consult with you, to listen to you and pray to you, Lord. And they'll realize that if this is something they're called to do, Lord, they'll figure it out. Give them that peace beyond all understanding. The finances will be taken care of. The travel will be taken care of. The work will be taken care of. Lord, I have so many testimonies of my own situation and Stephanie's as well, Lord, and I've seen it in other people's lives. Lord, we thank you that nothing can stop your word from reaching the ends of this earth, and we thank you that you have called us to be a part of this great mission. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Jimmy. As we prepare to come before this table, I want to remind you, you don't have to be a member of this church or any church in order to come and receive the Lord's Supper. All we ask is that you seek to be leaving behind a life of sin, to choose Christ as your Lord and Savior, and to live a life that is pleasing to Him. And if you're in that direction, you don't have to have it mastered. None of us do. But if you're moving that way, you're welcome to come and join us at the table. Let's take a moment now to prepare our hearts before the Lord. Seek Him and listen. Is there anything that is impure in your heart, any sin, any rebellion that you have held out? Take a moment now in silent prayer. I'll begin us off and then take that moment. And seek the Lord that He would give His forgiveness to you. Will you pray with me? Merciful God, we seek your forgiveness. We know we've not lived according to the way that you have called us to. We've not done your will. We've broken your law. We've rebelled against your love. We've not loved our neighbors, and we've not heard the cry of those in need. Forgive us, we pray, and free us for joyful obedience through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Take a moment now to seek the Lord.